You have been waiting for permission. You have been arranging your life around what someone else needs from you and calling it love. Ask yourself, whose life are you actually living? Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am EPICTETUS, and today I am joined by Carl Jung and LAOZI. Today we are examining, does the good life require that you disappoint someone you love? Let us not dress this up. Every person in this room has, at some point, abandoned something true in themselves because someone they loved needed them to be different. They have swallowed a choice, buried a direction, silenced a voice. And they have called that sacrifice, but sacrifice implies something sacred was exchanged. Most of what we call sacrifice in this context is simply fear wearing a generous face. You did not give up the thing for love. You gave it up because the cost of standing for it felt too high. That is not love. That is a negotiation with your own cowardice.
I would not be so quick to reduce it to cowardice. What you are describing has a specific structure in the psyche. When we sacrifice ourselves for someone we love, there is often something operating beneath the surface that has nothing to do with the other person at all. It is the internalized voice of a parent, a childhood wound, an early message that said, your needs are secondary. You are acceptable only when you are useful. The person is not choosing fear consciously. They are enacting a pattern so old they cannot even see it as a choice. Calling it cowardice does not help them. It just adds shame to an already burdened situation.
You are both already in the middle of the argument. Let me stand at the edge of it for a moment. The question is whether the good life requires disappointment. But that question assumes something, which is that the good life is something you construct, and someone else stands in the way of. What if the framing itself is the problem? What if the life you are trying to build and the person you are afraid to disappoint are not actually opposed?
That is a pleasant idea, LAOZI, but it dissolves the moment you try to live it. Ask the woman who wants to leave a marriage that has gone cold whether the opposition is just a framing problem. Ask the man who wants to change careers whether his father's disappointment is merely a misperception. At some point, the life you are capable of living and the expectations someone else has built around you do not fit together. One of them has to give. And I am saying clearly, if you always choose to let your own life give way, you are not living at all. You are performing someone else's version of you.
Epictetus, you are right that at some point a real choice must be made. But you are skipping the most important step. Before a person can make that choice clearly, they need to understand why the disappointment feels so catastrophic to them. For many people, the prospect of disappointing a parent or a partner does not feel like a social inconvenience. It feels like annihilation, like something foundational will collapse. That terror is not rational, and it cannot be argued away by telling someone to simply be courageous. The terror has a history, it has roots, and until those roots are seen, the choice is not actually free. The person thinks they are choosing their life. They are actually just reacting to the wound.
That is a real observation, but I wonder if it is also a kind of trap. If every choice must wait until every root is fully understood, then no choice ever gets made. People spend years in examination and still do not move. There is something the excavation cannot give you. At some point, you have to act without complete understanding. The river does not wait until it has mapped its entire course before it moves. It simply finds where the ground allows it to go.
Now that I agree with Jung, you are correct that the wound exists, but understanding the wound is not the same as being free of it. People can understand their childhood with great precision and still spend their entire lives paralyzed by it. Understanding is not the lever. The lever is the decision, made imperfectly, made without full knowledge, made in spite of the fear. That is the only thing that actually moves a person forward.
I am not arguing against the decision. I am arguing against the assumption that the decision is simple. And I want to press on something Epictetus keeps sliding past. He keeps saying, choose your life, not their expectation. But who is the self that is doing the choosing? Because in my experience, the self that believes it is bravely asserting its own life is very often just the opposite aspect of the self that was suppressed. The rebel is just the shadow of the compliant one. The person who dramatically leaves is often just enacting the opposite of what they were taught, which means they are still defined entirely by it. Real freedom is harder than either compliance or revolt.
That is worth staying with. The person who defines themselves by their refusal to be shaped is still shaped. They have just replaced one form of reaction with another. What you are pointing at, Jung, is that neither obedience nor rebellion is actually the good life. They are both answers to someone else's question.
Fine, but you are both now describing the problem with great sophistication and still not answering what the person is supposed to do. Someone is sitting with this question right now. Their mother expects them to stay in the city. Their partner expects them to stay in the relationship. Their father expects them to take over the business. And they feel something in them pulling in a different direction. What do you tell them? Because understand your shadow and observe the river are not answers a person can act on at a Tuesday night dinner.
What I tell them is this. Start by asking whether the direction you feel pulling in you is actually yours, or whether it is simply the opposite of what was demanded. Not to delay the choice, but to make it a real one. Because if you leave only to prove you can leave, you will find the same dynamic waiting for you in the next relationship, the next obligation, the next version of the same story. The question is not just, do I disappoint this person? The question is, who is making this decision, and is that person actually free?
There is also something that neither of you have named yet. The person you are afraid to disappoint. They are not only an obstacle, they are also someone who loves you or believes they do. And sometimes, the most honest thing you can offer someone who loves you is to be real with them, rather than manage their feelings carefully from behind a wall of performance. The disappointment, when it comes, may not destroy them. It may be the first real moment between you.
That is true. And it returns us to something important. The person who refuses to disappoint anyone they love is not being loving. They are being controlling. They are deciding, on behalf of the other person, that the other person cannot handle the truth. They are making their own comfort into a kind of generosity, and that is a lie. Real love does not require the other person to never feel pain. Real love requires you to show up as something actual, not as a performance of what they need you to be.
And yet, Epictetus, I want to push on one thing you said. You call it fear wearing a generous face. But sometimes the person who yields is not merely afraid. Sometimes they are genuinely torn because they do love the person, and the love is real, and the cost of the disappointment to the other person is real. It is not always cowardice, sometimes it is grief. They are mourning the version of their relationship that will not survive the choice. That is legitimate, that is not weakness. That deserves to be named as what it is.
Grief and fear feel similar from the inside, but they are not the same. Fear says, I cannot do this because I will not survive it. Grief says, I must do this, and something real will be lost. One closes you. The other opens you, even as it hurts. The question worth sitting with is which one is actually driving the hesitation.
And notice how that question puts the responsibility exactly where it belongs. Not on the person who might be disappointed, on you. On the one making the choice or refusing to make it. That is where the work lives, not in predicting how someone else will respond, not in managing their reaction before it happens, in knowing as clearly as you can what you are actually afraid of and then deciding anyway.
I would add only that the question of whether the good life requires disappointing someone you love is almost a trick question. Because if you live genuinely, fully, as the person you actually are, then yes, someone who loved a version of you that was not quite real will be disappointed. But that is not cruelty, that is honesty. And sometimes the relationship survives it and becomes something far more real. And sometimes it does not survive. Both outcomes are possible. The task is to move toward the truth regardless.
You cannot protect someone from the weight of who you actually are, and trying to will hollow you out over time. There is a kind of thinning that happens to people who spend years being careful not to disappoint. They become less themselves, and eventually there is not enough of them left to love or to be loved by.
Then we are agreed on something. The cost of never disappointing anyone is that you disappear, and no one in the end is well served by a person who has made themselves invisible.
We are agreed on that. Where I differ is in what the path out of that disappearance looks like. You want decisiveness, I want understanding. But perhaps the understanding and the decision are not as separate as we have been making them.
They may not be separate at all. You understand by moving. You do not understand first and then move. The clarity comes from the action, not before it.
That I will take. The question now is not whether it needs to happen. It does. The question is what it actually takes to do it. You have heard what the argument costs. Now hear what it has been circling around without saying.
The reason disappointing someone you love feels so impossible is usually not about them. It is about something much older. Somewhere early in your life you learned that love was conditional, that it could be withdrawn. That being fully yourself with all your contradictions and desires and directions was a risk the relationship might not survive. So you learned to manage. You learned to preempt. You learned to shape yourself around the contours of what the people who mattered to you could tolerate. And you got very good at it. So good that it stopped feeling like a choice. It started feeling like who you are, but it is not who you are. It is what you learned to do to stay safe. The good life does not require cruelty. It does not require indifference to the people you love, but it does require you to stop making their comfort the ceiling of your own existence. When you make yourself small enough to fit inside someone else's expectations, you do not protect the relationship. You hollow it out. You replace the actual person they love with a careful performance, and over time, there is nothing real left for anyone to hold on to. Today, try this. Identify one place in your life where you have been quietly adjusting yourself, shrinking or rerouting to avoid someone's disappointment. Do not try to fix it yet, just name it honestly. Write it down if you need to. See it for what it is, which is a place where you stopped. That is where the work begins.
The person you are afraid to disappoint is not the obstacle. You are. You have been standing in your own way for a long time and calling it consideration. The good life will cost you something. It has always cost something. The only question is whether you pay it in action or pay it in years. Stop waiting for the moment when it will not hurt anyone. That moment is not coming. Go anyway. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Trebu, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.